On the first day I arrived in this world, the Prime Minister's manor ran out of food. Outside, autumn rain fell without end. Cold wind slipped through the cracks of the window, carrying dampness into the room. I sat on a carved wooden bed and stared at the unfamiliar canopy above me, while the last thing lingering in my mind was the sharp pain of a kitchen range hood falling on me in my previous life. One moment, I had been a food blogger who made a living filming home cooking videos. At 3 in the morning, I was still in my kitchen, recording the final glossy reduction of braised pork. The next moment, I had become Shen Mingtong, the only legitimate daughter of the Prime Minister's manor in the Great Jing dynasty. It sounded noble. In reality, I had opened my eyes straight into disaster. My maid, Qinghe, came in with a bowl of rice soup so thin it could reflect a person's face. Her eyes were red as she said, "Miss, this is all that's left in the kitchen. Please have a little first." I stared at that bowl in silence for a long while. This was not rice soup. This was water that had once heard a rumor about rice. I held my forehead and slowly sorted through the memories left behind by the original owner of this body. She was 16 this year, the only daughter of Shen Huaiyan, the current left prime minister. Shen Huaiyan was upright, honest, and painfully incorruptible. Born from a poor family, he had earned first place in the imperial examinations through real talent, then climbed step by step into the position of prime minister with nothing but a straight spine and a stubborn conscience. Logically, a prime minister's household should not have been this poor. Unfortunately, Shen Huaiyan's honesty had gone far beyond normal. He refused bribes. He did not buy farmland. He never touched public silver. Most of the gold and silver rewarded to him by the emperor was sent away for disaster relief. His monthly salary was used to support poor scholars and struggling relatives. The manor's expenses had been cut again and again until now, when even the rice jar was nearly empty. The original Shen Mingtong had always been frail. She had a soft temper and understood that her father's official life was difficult, so she never dared complain. The night before, she had gone to sleep hungry, caught a chill from the cold wind, and never woke up again. That was when I came. I looked down at my slender fingers, then at the bowl of rice water, and only one thought remained in my mind. Good news. I had become the daughter of a prime minister. Bad news. The prime minister's manor was so poor it could barely afford pickled vegetables. Even worse news. I, a person who had once made a living through food, was now about to starve after transmigrating. I picked up the bowl and took a sip. It tasted like rock bottom. Qing watched me carefully. "Miss, don't be upset. Master has already gone to court. When his salary is issued, the manor will be able to buy rice." I immediately caught the key point. Did father eat breakfast? Qing froze. I put the bowl down. Did he eat? Qinghe lowered her head. Her voice grew smaller and smaller. Master said court affairs were urgent, so he had no time. I gave a cold little laugh. Searching through the original owner's memories, I realized this was not the first time. Shen Huaiyan went to court before dawn every day. The household had no money for meat, so breakfast was often just half a cold flatbread. Sometimes there was not even that. He would fill his stomach with cold water and pretend he was not hungry. He was the hardest bone in the Great Jing court, but inside his own home, he was the one least capable of taking care of himself. No wonder, in the original Shen Mingtong's memories, her father always returned from court with a face as pale as paper and claimed it was because state affairs had tired him. Tired, my foot. He was hungry. I took a deep breath, supported myself against the bed, and stood. Qinghe was so frightened that she hurried over to hold me. "Miss, you haven't recovered. You mustn't move around." I asked, "Where is the kitchen?" Qing stared at me. I asked again, What food is left in the manor? Ching counted on her fingers. Half a bag of old rice, a handful of dried beans, 2 wilted radishes, 3 eggs, and a few wild scallions the steward dug up from the back courtyard yesterday. The more she listed, the guiltier she looked, but my eyes lit up. Rice, beans, radishes, eggs, and scallions. That was enough to save lives. In my previous life as a food blogger, what I was best at was not fancy delicacies, but making the most ordinary ingredients taste warm and comforting. Poverty was not terrifying. A kitchen without ideas was terrifying. I draped an outer robe over my shoulders and took Ching He to the kitchen. The Prime Minister's kitchen was even poorer than I had imagined. The stove was old and blackened. The edge of the iron pot was chipped. Firewood was stacked in a corner. A thin layer of old rice sat at the bottom of the rice jar. The radishes lay wrinkled in a basket, like elderly officials who had been battered by life. Cook Joe was standing there worrying. When she saw me enter, she quickly bowed. "Miss, why are you here?" I rolled up my sleeves. "Today, I'll take charge of the kitchen." Cook Joe's face changed. "Miss, you're precious and delicate. How can you touch smoky kitchen work?" I looked at her, then looked at the rice jar. Would a precious and delicate person be so hungry she can't even drink enough rice soup? Cook Joe fell silent. I first asked Ching He to wash the old rice and keep the cloudy rice water. Then I asked Cook Joe to soak the dried beans in hot water and wash and shred the radishes. The kitchen knife was dull and heavy. When I picked it up, I almost lost control of it. But after years of cooking in my previous life, the feeling in my hands was still there. A few cuts later, the radish shreds were not as fine as hair, but they were neat and clean. Cook Joe stared. "Miss, this knife work," I said calmly. "I learned it in a dream." After transmigration, all things that could not be explained could be blamed on dreams. I put a small amount of old rice into the pot and simmered it slowly until the grains opened and softened. Then I added the shredded radish, a little salt, and chopped wild scallions. Finally, I cracked in 1 egg and stirred it into delicate ribbons. Steam soon rose from the pot. The sweetness of the radish mixed with the fragrance of rice. Egg flowers floated on the surface, and the green scallions dotted the porridge with warmth. With such poor ingredients, the pot had somehow become comforting. Chingy stood beside me and swallowed. Cook Joe also could not help leaning closer to smell it. "Miss, why does this porridge smell so good?" I did not stop. The rice water could not be wasted either. I poured it into a small basin, added a little salt and chopped scallion, beat in another egg, mixed it well, and set it to steam. There was no modern steamer, so I asked Cook Joe to put a bamboo grate over the pot and cover it with a wooden lid. We steamed it slowly over low fire. A short while later, the egg custard set into a tender, golden surface. When I touched it lightly with chopsticks, it trembled like water. I did not touch the last egg. The household was too poor. We needed to keep one for emergencies. When the porridge was ready, Shen Huaiyan still had not returned. I asked Ching He to first place a bowl in front of the original owner's late mother's memorial tablet. The original Shen Mingtang's mother had passed early. In this manner, only father and daughter depended on each other. However poor Shen Huaiyan was, he truly loved his daughter. He starved himself, but never willingly denied her a bite. Since I had taken over her body, I should also take care of this father for her. Near noon, footsteps sounded outside. Shen Huaiyan returned. His blue official robe was damp from the rain. His shoulders seemed heavy, and his face was pale, but his back remained straight, as if even the sky falling could not bend him. The steward said softly, "Master, Miss is waiting for you in the kitchen." Shen Huaiyan stopped at once. Worry flashed in his eyes. "Mingtong is sick. Why did she go to the kitchen?" He hurried in. When he saw me standing safely by the stove, he first relaxed, then frowned. Nonsense. The kitchen is full of smoke. Your body is weak. How can you come here? I placed the hot porridge on the table. Father, eat first. Shen Huayan looked at the bowl and froze. There was shredded radish in the white porridge, soft egg ribbons, scallion fragrance, and beside it, a little cup of tender egg custard. In a wealthy household, this would have been nothing. In the current Prime Minister's manner, it was almost a festival meal. His throat moved, but he still said, "I'm not hungry. You eat." I stared at him. Father didn't eat this morning. Last night, you only drank half a bowl of rice soup. Now you say you're not hungry. Do you want me to bring medicine to court for you tomorrow? Shen Huayan was stunned. I pushed the spoon into his hand. Eat. Perhaps my tone sounded too much like the way I used to urge my followers to take care of themselves, because Shen Huayan did not refute me. He sat down and took a spoonful. The moment the porridge entered his mouth, his expression changed. It was not the shock of eating rare delicacies. It was the slow comfort of warmth spreading through an empty stomach. The radish was sweet and clean. The rice was soft and smooth. The egg was tender. After one bowl, the stomach that had been empty all morning finally had somewhere to rest. Shen Huayan quietly ate half the bowl, then looked at the egg custard. I pushed it toward him. He said softly, "Mingtong, you should eat too." I smiled. I already did. Actually, I was not full, but I knew he needed it more. After Shen Huayan finished, the color in his face was visibly better. He put down the spoon and looked at me with complicated eyes. When did my Mingtong learn to cook? As always, I blamed everything on a dream. When I was ill, I dreamed of Mother. She said, Father didn't know how to take care of himself and told me to learn how to manage the household. Shen Huayan's eyes reddened. At the mention of his late wife, all his doubts softened. He reached out and patted my head. "It is Father who is useless. I made you suffer with me." My heart suddenly felt sour. This Prime Minister, upright to the point of stubbornness, might not be a man who knew how to earn money, but he was a good father and a good official. I looked at him seriously. Father is not useless. Father just doesn't know how to live properly. Shen Huayan froze. I continued, "From today on, I'll take charge of the food in this manner. Father only needs to attend court with peace of mind. Don't go hungry while arguing with those old foxes anymore." Shen Huayan wanted to refuse. Unfortunately, at that very moment, his stomach made a sound. The kitchen fell silent. I lowered my head and pretended not to hear. Qinghe tried desperately not to laugh. Shen Huayan's ears turned faintly red. At last, he coughed and said, "Do as you wish." And so, my first career in the Great Jing dynasty began with saving the Prime Minister's dining table. The manor had no money. That was a fact. But there were poor ways to eat, and there were clever poor ways to eat. I first checked the remaining supplies in the household, then asked the steward to bring me the accounts. The moment the ledgers were opened, I almost fainted. Shen Huayan's salary was not low, but each month, as soon as it arrived, part of it went to widows and orphans in the clan. Another part supported poor scholars. The rest paid servants' wages, repaired the manor, bought paper and ink, and finally, what reached the kitchen was pitiful. Even more outrageous, for convenience, the manor had been buying rice on credit from the same shop for years. The rice shop sent worse and worse rice, but the price kept rising. I pointed at the ledger. "This Yongfeng rice shop. Is it very familiar with our manor?" "Old Chen," the steward sighed. "Smiths, the good rice shops in the capital all know Master is incorruptible and don't want to sell to us on credit. Only Yongfeng is willing." I sneered. "Willing to extend credit, yes. Willing to rob us, also yes." The same old rice was 30% higher than market price, and it was mixed with broken sand. No wonder the porridge had an earthy smell. Old Chen was shocked. "Miss, how can you tell?" I spread a few grains of rice across my palm. "There are too many broken grains. The color is gray. When washed, fine sand settles at the bottom. This isn't what a proper rice shop should sell." In my previous life, in order to film budget cooking videos, I had studied how to choose ingredients. Whether rice was good, whether flour was fresh, whether vegetables had sat overnight, I could judge most of it with one look. I told Old Chen, "Tomorrow, take 2 servants to the Western market. Don't go to the large shops. Look for farmers coming into the city early in the morning. Buy broken rice, tofu, radishes, cabbage, bean sprouts, and if there are cheap pork bones, buy those too." Old Chen hesitated. "Broken rice may not taste good." I said, "It will if it's cooked properly." The next day, Old Chen did as told. He spent only half as much silver as usual and returned with a large bag of broken rice, 2 baskets of cabbage, several handfuls of bean sprouts, half a basket of radishes, and a set of pork bones that the butcher had looked down on. There was not much meat left on the bones, but they had marrow. Perfect for soup. Cook Joe stared at everything and worried. "Miss, what can these make?" I looked at the pork bones in a very good mood. "Something people will wake up thinking about." I first put the pork bones into cold water, boiled out the scum, washed them clean, then placed them back into the pot with slices of ginger and scallion. After bringing it to a rolling boil, I lowered the fire and simmered it slowly. The Great Jing had no modern seasonings, but it did have salt, soy paste, vinegar, peppercorns, ginger, scallion, garlic, even cinnamon and star anise. Ordinary households just used them sparingly. After more than an hour, the pork bone soup turned milky white. Its fragrance slowly spread through the kitchen, warming the whole room. I washed the broken rice and crushed it into a rough batter. There was no stone mill, so we used a mortar and pestle. Qinghe was so tired her arms ached. I told her not to rush. Good food often needed patience. Once the rice batter was ready, I ladled a thin layer into the hot pan, spread it into sheets, cut them into wide strips, then boiled them in the bone broth. Finally, I added blanched bean sprouts and chopped scallions. A humble bowl of bone broth rice noodles was finished. The hot soup was pale and clear. The rice noodles were soft and smooth. The bean sprouts were crisp. The scallions added fragrance. Cook Joe took one bite and froze. Qinghe was even more dramatic. She held her bowl and nearly cried. "Miss, this is too delicious." I smiled. "Don't rush. There's still cabbage and pork bone porridge, shredded radish cakes, and sour, spicy bean sprouts." That afternoon, Shen Huaiyan returned from court. The moment he entered the manor, he smelled the fragrance. His footsteps stopped. Without even changing out of his court robe, he followed the scent into the kitchen. I was ladling out rice noodles. When I saw him, I brought him a bowl. "Father, today you'll have soup noodles first. It will warm your stomach." Shen Huaiyan looked into the bowl, puzzled. "What is this?" "Made from rice," I said, "cooked in bone broth." He sat down and took one bite. His expression softened, then came the second bite, the third, and soon the bowl was empty. After eating, he stared at the empty bowl for a moment and said, "Mingtang, if father remembers correctly, the kitchen spent less silver today than yesterday." I nodded. "Yes." He asked, "Then why did we eat better?" "Because before the household saved money in the wrong place." Shen Huaiyan looked at me. I said seriously, "Saving money doesn't mean starving. It doesn't mean eating spoiled rice. It means buying the right things at the right price and using every ingredient fully. Pork bones can make soup. Broken rice can make noodles. Cabbage stems can be stewed. Cabbage leaves can be stir-fried. Radish peels can be pickled. Bean sprout roots can make stock. There are no useless ingredients, only people who don't know how to live." Shen Huaiyan listened for a long time without speaking. Then he said softly, "Ming Tang, that sounds less like cooking and more like governing." I paused. He continued, "The national treasury has limits. The people's strength has limits. If the court only knows how to squeeze the people for taxes, it is like starving yourself to save money. But if silver is used where it should be used, even a set of pork bones can become good soup." I was impressed. As expected of the Prime Minister, he could understand statecraft from a bowl of rice noodles. I smiled. "If father thinks it useful, say it to His Majesty at court tomorrow." Shen Huaiyan shook his head with a helpless smile. "If I speak of pork bone soup in court, the censors may impeach me for neglecting proper affairs." I did not take it seriously, but I never expected that the next day, Shen Huaiyan truly brought it up in court. That morning, the Minister of Revenue was complaining again. There had been disaster in the north, riverbank repairs in the south, delayed military pay in the west, and the treasury was strained. The officials argued endlessly. Some proposed raising taxes, some proposed borrowing from merchants, some proposed cutting military expenses. Shen Huaiyan listened for a long while, then stepped forward. "Your Majesty, this subject believes that frugality does not lie in burdening the people, but in checking hidden leaks." The young emperor, Xiao Jingheng, sat upon the dragon throne, his features cold and sharp. Hearing this, he lifted his eyes. "Prime Minister Shen, what insight do you have?" So Shen Huaiyan spoke of a bag of broken rice, a set of pork bones, and a basket of cabbage in a household. Of course, he spoke elegantly. He did not mention me, nor did he mention himself going hungry. He only said that in ordinary household management, if purchasing was unclear and waste was unchecked, one could spend great money and still eat poor food. The national treasury was the same. At first, some court officials secretly laughed. The dignified left prime minister was talking about kitchens in court, but the more they listened, the fewer people could laugh. Because Shen Huaiyan soon moved from inflated rice prices to false losses in government granaries, from kitchen scraps to construction materials in the Ministry of Works, from pork bone soup to repairing old armor for soldiers. His logic was clear. Every sentence landed on reality. After listening, Xiao Jingheng tapped his fingers lightly against the imperial desk. Interest appeared in his eyes. "Prime Minister Shen's theory has some scent of ordinary life." Shen Huaiyan bowed. "The livelihood of the people is found in ordinary smoke and fire." The entire hall quieted. Xiao Jingheng looked at him for a long while, then smiled. "Approved. The Ministry of Revenue and the Censorate will investigate granary losses across the provinces. The Ministry of Works will establish a separate verification procedure for purchases. The Bureau of Military Equipment will also present methods for repairing old armor." A debate that should have ended in higher taxes was pressed down just like that. After court, Xiao Jingheng kept Shen Huaiyan behind. In the imperial study, ruler and minister faced each other. Xiao Jingheng asked, "The words you spoke today, did you think of them yourself?" Shen Huaiyan was silent for a moment, then answered honestly, "This subject was inspired by my daughter." Xiao Jingheng raised an eyebrow. "The young Miss Shen, who has long been ill at home?" Shen Huaiyan nodded. Xiao Jingheng looked thoughtful. "To see the national treasury from a kitchen. This Miss Shen is interesting." Alarm bells rang in Shen Huaiyan's heart. He immediately said, "My daughter only spoke nonsense. She is unworthy of your Majesty's praise." Xiao Jingheng glanced at him. "Why is Prime Minister Shen so nervous? I am not going to eat her." Shen Huaiyan thought, His Majesty may not eat people, but the royal family is best at making people suffer. When he returned home, he specially warned me not to go out for the next few days. I was busy pickling radish peels. Hearing this, I looked up. Why? Shen Huayan answered vaguely. The wind in the capital is strong. I looked out the window, the sky was clear. But I did not ask further, because I had more important things to do. If the Prime Minister's manor wanted to eat well for the long term, we could not rely only on saving. Saving to the extreme only meant barely surviving. To improve life, we had to create income. But Shen Huayan would never allow me to do anything that damaged the reputation of the Prime Minister's household. Opening a restaurant directly was impossible. Showing my face in public was impossible. Selling food under the Prime Minister's name was even more impossible. After thinking it over, I decided to begin inside the manor. Although the Prime Minister's manor was poor, Shen Huayan's had many students. These poor scholars often came to the manor to ask for guidance on essays. Every one of them was thin enough to look as if he had crawled out of a book. Their meals were usually steamed buns and pickles. I asked the kitchen to cook a large pot of mixed grain porridge every afternoon, along with a few small dishes. Any scholar who came to study could drink a bowl. At first, Shen Huayan did not agree. The household was already strained. I pushed the ledger toward him. Father, don't worry. Mixed grains are cheap. Radishes and cabbages are inexpensive too. It will only cost a few dozen coins each day. If these scholars drink porridge, avoid illness, and do not lose a day of study, it is worth it. Shen Huayan looked at me and finally nodded. And so, outside the Prime Minister's study, there appeared a large steaming pot. On the first day, the scholars were restrained and did not dare reach out. I personally asked Qinghe to ladle the porridge and said gently, "Studying drains the mind. An empty stomach harms the body. Since you are father's students, there is no need to be polite." The porridge was not plain. I used broken rice, soybeans, mung beans, and a few pieces of red date scraps to make it thick and lightly sweet. With crisp pickled radish peels, it was refreshing and appetizing. A poor scholar named Lu Yunzhou finished his bowl, his eyes shining faintly. In a low voice, he said, "Student has never had such good porridge." I smiled. "Study well. Become a good official one day. That will repay this bowl of porridge." Lu Yunzhou bowed solemnly, word slowly spread. Soon, scholars in the capital all knew that there was a pot of calming, stomach-warming mixed grain porridge in Prime Minister Shen's manor. At first, they came to seek guidance. Later, some came half an hour early purely for that bowl of porridge. Shen Huayan did not know whether to laugh or cry, but strangely enough, the sound of reading in the study grew louder, and the scholars' spirits improved. One day, the chancellor of the Imperial Academy passed by, smelled the porridge, and shamelessly drank a bowl. The next day, the Academy sent 2 bags of new rice as thanks for Shen Huayan's care toward scholars. On the 3rd day, an old Hanlin scholar sent a jar of homemade pickled plums. On the 4th day, a local official who had once received Shen Huayan's help entered the capital to report his duties. Hearing of the matter, he sent a cart of winter vegetables, saying it was not a bribe but food for the scholars. Shen Huayan refused firmly. So I had the source and purpose recorded on the spot, then used all the vegetables for the scholars' meals, not allowing a single leaf to enter the private storehouse. Everything was clear. No one could criticize it. The kitchen finally stopped worrying every day. I began experimenting with more dishes. Broken rice became rice cakes. Soybeans became soy milk. Bean dregs became pancakes. Radishes were simmered in bone broth. Cabbage and tofu became stew. Pickled plums steamed with meat. Scallion oil noodles. Hot soup wontons. Without anyone noticing, the food in the Prime Minister's manor became a legend in the capital. They said Prime Minister Shen's household was poor, but its food could make people forget their worries. They said Miss Shen had dreamed of an immortal while ill, and learned a skill that could turn plain ingredients into gold. They said after eating one bowl of Shen family porridge, one's writing would become 3 parts smoother. The rumors became more and more ridiculous. I held my forehead. Ching, however, was proud. "Miss, this proves your cooking is good," I said. "If this keeps spreading, tomorrow someone will say 1 pot of my porridge can cure all illnesses." She thought seriously for a moment. "Mrs. Porridge does nourish the stomach." I had nothing to say. Just as life in the Prime Minister's manor gradually improved, trouble came. The owner of Yangfeng Rice Shop came to the door and said the Prime Minister's manor owed 3 months of rice money. If we did not pay, he would take us to court. Old Chen was so angry his face turned red. "We only owe 1 month. The first 2 months were already paid." The shopkeeper took out a ledger. It is written clearly in black and white, with the Shen Manor's signature and seal. I took the ledger and understood immediately. The accounts were clever. Old rice, new rices, transportation fees, losses, and storage fees were all mixed together. Vague seals were used to cover the confusion. Anyone unfamiliar with purchasing accounts would easily be trapped. The old accountant in our manor was aged. He had probably been cheated without realizing it. Seeing that I was young, the shopkeeper spoke lightly. "Miss Shen, repaying debt is natural. Prime Minister Shen is famous for his clean reputation. Surely he would not refuse to pay what he owes." I smiled. "Naturally, we will not refuse a true debt, but false accounts cannot be accepted either." The shopkeeper's expression changed. "Miss, please be careful with your words." I closed the ledger and told old Chen to invite someone from the capital magistrate's office. Then I told Qinghe to bring the purchase notes from our recent trips to the Western market. The shopkeeper began to panic, though he forced himself to remain calm. The official who arrived was a young judge named Gu Qingyuan. He came from a poor background and had once been recommended by Shen Huaiyan. He acted fairly. Seeing me, he did not favor our manor, but checked the accounts according to procedure. I laid out the rice samples, market prices, and purchase records one by one, then pointed out 3 repeated charges, 2 forged losses, and 1 seal where the handwriting did not match. The more Gu Qingyuan looked, the more serious his expression became. Sweat appeared on the shopkeeper's forehead. In the end, he gritted his teeth and said it was the accountant's mistake. I knew nothing of it. I said lightly, "To always make mistakes that increase the amount and never once make a mistake that lowers it is also a rare talent." Qing could not hold back her laugh. Gu Qingyuan took the shopkeeper away for investigation. The matter itself was not huge, but it uncovered a chain of cases in which merchants in the capital cheated poor officials. Many poor officials valued reputation and did not wish to argue with merchants. As a result, they were treated as easy prey. When Shen Huaiyan heard of it, his face darkened for a long time. I said, "Father, being clean does not mean letting others bully you. A gentleman should not be greedy, but he also should not allow villains to gnaw on his bones." Shen Huaiyan looked at me deeply. The next day, he submitted a memorial proposing reforms to credit accounts in the capital. He also suggested that officials' household purchases should keep clear records, both to prevent corruption and to prevent fraud. Xiao Jingheng wrote 1 word, "Approved." The person behind Yangfeng Rice Shop could no longer sit still. The shop was owned by the nephew of Zhao Qi, an assistant minister in the Ministry of Revenue. Zhao Qi loved to present himself in court as noble and upright, but in private he made money from all kinds of purchasing commissions. Shen Huaiyan had touched his interests. Naturally, Zhao Qi would not let it pass. Soon, rumors spread through the capital. They said Prime Minister Shen used porridge charity to buy scholars' loyalty and build a false reputation. They said Miss Shen ignored proper conduct, spent her days in the kitchen, and behaved like a common cook. They said Shen Huaiyan claimed to be honest but accepted gifts from students and hid private wealth. The rumors came fast and viciously. Qinghe was so angry, she cried. They're bullying us too much. I was not surprised. People who made content understood this best. Once you began to be seen, praise and criticism would both arrive. In my previous life, when my videos became popular, people had scolded me too. They called me fake, accused me of pretending to be virtuous, claimed I staged everything. Later, I understood. What mattered was not blocking every mouth, but making sure my own work was steady enough. I asked old Chen to copy all income and expense records into 3 sets. One was sent to the capital magistrate for filing. One was pasted on the outer wall of the Prime Minister's manor. One remained in our household. Every source of food for the scholars, every coin spent, every remaining portion was written clearly. On the day the clear accounts were posted outside the manor, crowds gathered 3 layers deep. Some came to watch. Some came to find fault. Some had believed the rumors. But when they saw that even a handful of chopped scallions had been recorded clearly, they could say nothing. Even better, the scholars who had eaten the porridge came forward to testify. Lu Yunzhou wrote an essay called A Bowl of Porridge, and it spread throughout the capital. There were no grand phrases in it. He simply wrote of studying in winter, of an empty stomach, of how one bowl of hot porridge could remind a poor scholar that the world had not abandoned him. He wrote that if the court could let every poor scholar under heaven have such a bowl of hot porridge, that would be the beginning of a prosperous age. The chancellor of the Imperial Academy read it and praised it highly. Later, somehow, it entered the palace. Xiao Jingheng read the essay and remained silent for a long time. He asked Gao Yuan, the chief eunuch at his side, "Is the porridge in Prime Minister Shen's manor truly so good?" Gao Yuan answered carefully, "This servant does not know." Xiao Jingheng looked out at the cold wind beyond the window and suddenly said, "Tomorrow, we leave the palace." Gao Yuan was startled. "Where does your majesty wish to go?" "Prime Minister Shen's manor." And so the next day, a very noble meal guest arrived at the Prime Minister's manor. That day, I was making shredded radish pastries. The lard came from leftover fatty scraps, bought from the butcher. There was not much, but it was fragrant. I blanched shredded radish, squeezed out the water, mixed it with scallions, salt, and a little ground peppercorn, then wrapped it in hot water dough, rolled it into thin cakes, and pan-fried them over low heat until both sides turned golden. The pan sizzled. The fragrance floated through the entire courtyard. Shen's Huaiyan was receiving a guest in the front hall. I did not know who it was, so I simply asked Qinghe to send over a plate of snacks. A moment later, Qinghe ran back with a pale face. "Miss, the gentleman in the front hall said he wants another plate." I said, "Then send one." Qing's voice trembled. "Master looks like he's about to faint." My heart skipped. Thinking some powerful noble had come, I washed my hands and went to the front hall. The moment I entered, I saw a young man in black everyday robes sitting below the main seat. His features were extremely handsome, his bearing calm and reserved. His clothing was low-key, yet he was like a sword hidden in a sheath. Even the way he held his tea carried the ease of someone accustomed to standing above others. Shen Huaiyan sat beside him, his back even straighter than when attending court. I understood instantly. The only person who could make the Prime Minister this nervous was Emperor Xiao Jingheng. I was about to kneel when Xiao Jingheng raised a hand to stop me. "I am traveling privately today. No need for ceremony." I thought, "You may say there is no need, but if I truly skip it, my father may become ill tomorrow." So I still bowed properly. Common girl Shen Mingtang greets young master. Xiao Jingheng looked at me, amusement faint in his eyes. Miss Shen need not be nervous. I only came to taste the famous home-cooked meal of the Prime Minister's manor. Shen Huayan's face almost turned white. I was calmer than he was. What was the professional instinct of a food blogger? Whether the person who came was a fan or a client, feed them first. I smiled. Young master came at the right time. Today there are shredded radish pastries, bone broth tofu stew, steamed meat with pickled plum, and mixed grain porridge. If you do not mind, please stay for a simple meal. Xiao Jingheng's eyes brightened. I do not mind, Shen Huayan said in a low voice. Your young master, the manor has only plain food. It may not suit your taste. Xiao Jingheng looked at him. If Prime Minister Shen can eat it every day, why can I not? Shen Huayan had no answer. I prepared that meal with extra care. The shredded radish pastries were crisp and golden outside, juicy and sweet inside. The bone broth tofu stew used milky pork bone soup as its base. Thick slices of tofu lay over cabbage leaves, bubbling with steam. The soup was fresh without being greasy. The steamed meat with pickled plum used a small amount of pork, chopped fine and mixed with plum, scallion, and ginger, before being steamed till tender. It was tart and fragrant. The mixed grain porridge was thick and soft. Xiao Jingheng first picked up a radish pastry. He took one bite, and his movement paused. I secretly watched his expression. The emperor was used to imperial meals. He lacked neither mountain delicacies nor sea treasures. The Prime Minister's simple home cooking won through warmth, fragrance, freshness, and honesty. Sure enough, he slowly finished one pastry, then picked up another. Shen Huayan watched from the side, alarmed, as if I were not serving food to the emperor, but piling explosives onto the imperial desk. Xiao Jingheng drank a mouthful of bone broth and said softly, "The imperial kitchen cannot make this flavor." I said, "Imperial meals care about ceremony. Home food cares about humanity. The fire is different, and so is the heart." Xiao Jingheng raised his eyes. "Humanity?" I nodded. The smoke and warmth of ordinary life. When someone is hungry, there is hot rice. When someone is cold, there is hot soup. Sour, sweet, salty, light, everything lands in a real place. It isn't made to show skill. It is made to let the person eating feel comfortable. Xiao Jingheng seemed thoughtful, then he asked, "How much did this table cost?" I gave a number. He raised an eyebrow. "So little?" I said. "There are expensive ways to eat and inexpensive ways to eat. The worst fear in eating is not poverty, but waste." Shen Huayan closed his eyes. He probably already sensed that I was about to move from kitchen matters to court matters again. As expected, Xiao Jingheng asked, "What is waste?" I put down my chopsticks. From the field to the table, every hand an ingredient passes through adds a layer of loss. Some loss is real, some loss is false. Farmers work hard to grow grain. Merchants work hard to transport it. Officials work hard to manage it. But if accounts are unclear and false reports pile up layer after layer, then the treasury spends silver, the people receive no benefit, and soldiers still cannot eat good grain. It is like a pot of soup where the meat never enters the pot, but the oil has already been scraped away. The front hall became quiet. Xiao Jingheng looked at me, his gaze deep and bright. Shen Huayan scolded softly, "Mingtang, do not discuss state affairs carelessly." I immediately lowered my head. This common girl spoke out of turn. But Xiao Jingheng laughed. "Prime Minister Shen, I think Miss Shen speaks more clearly than many officials." Shen Huayan grew even more nervous. After the meal, Xiao Jingheng did not leave immediately. He stood in the small courtyard of the Prime Minister's manor for a long while, watching scholars line up for porridge, watching the accounts posted on the wall, watching the kitchen work in orderly motion. Finally, he said, "Prime Minister Shen, I want to establish low-cost eateries in the capital, especially for poor scholars, low-ranking officials, and candidates who have come for the examinations. The meals need not be exquisite. They only need to be clean, cheap, and filling. Shen Huaiyan was stunned. My heart moved. Xiao Jingheng looked at me. What does Miss Shen think? I did not answer immediately. It was a good thing. But good things could easily become bad things. If government-run eateries were not managed well, they would quickly become a new piece of fat for corrupt hands. I said, the idea is good, but it cannot rely only on kindness. It must rely on rules. Xiao Jingheng said, speak. So I gave 3 points. First, the accounts must be public. Daily purchases, meals served, and remaining silver must all be posted. Second, portions must be fixed to prevent servants of wealthy households from falsely claiming meals, so that those who truly need them can eat. Third, ingredients should be bought nearby, directly from farmers outside the city through contracts, reducing middlemen and allowing farmers to earn a few more coins. Xiao Jingheng listened quietly. When I finished, he suddenly said, "Would Miss Shen be willing to help me do this?" Shen Huaiyan stood abruptly. "Your Majesty, my daughter is a young woman of the inner chambers. It is not suitable for her to involve herself in court affairs." Xiao Jingheng looked at him. "Prime Minister Shen, I did not say I would make her an official. I only ask her to set recipes, calculate costs, and teach cooks. Is even that forbidden?" Shen Huaiyan could not answer. I knew father feared I would be swept into storms, but I also knew this was an opportunity. If these low-cost eateries truly succeeded, they could help many people eat a hot meal. In my previous life, when I made cooking videos, people often left comments saying that after a tiring day, watching me cook made them feel life could still go on. Back then, I understood that food was never only food. Food was the strength that helped a person keep living. I looked up at Xiao Jingheng. This common girl is willing to try, but I have one condition. Shen Huaiyan nearly blacked out. Xiao Jingheng became even more interested. What condition? This matter must not be tied to the private name of the Shen family. No one may use it to flatter the Prime Minister's manner. All regulations must be recorded by the Ministry of Revenue, and the accounts must be inspected by the censorate. This common girl will only make recipes and procedures. After it succeeds, I will accept no reward. Xiao Jingheng looked at me for a long while, then smiled. Prime Minister Shen, your daughter knows how to avoid suspicion even better than you. Shen Huaiyan smiled bitterly. This subject is ashamed. Just like that, the first low-cost eatery in the capital opened 1 month later. Its name was simple: Warmth Hall. The location was chosen near the Imperial Academy. The storefront was not large, but it was clean and spacious. It served 3 kinds of meals daily. In the morning, mixed grain porridge with small pickles. At noon, bone broth rice noodles and vegetable rice. In the evening, tofu and cabbage stew with coarse flour cakes. The prices were so low, many people did not dare believe them. On the first day, a long line formed outside. Some suspected the court was only putting on a show. Some feared they would be registered after eating. Some were simply hungry and could not walk away after smelling the food. Lu Yunzhou brought several poor scholars and was the first to enter. Each paid their coins and carried out a steaming bowl of bone broth rice noodles. They sat at the long table. 1 mouthful of soup went down, and their eyes reddened. After that day, Warmth Hall became famous. Candidates came to eat. Low-ranking clerks came to eat. Porters from the docks came to eat. Those who could not afford a meal could chop firewood or wash bowls in exchange for food. The rules I set were detailed. Ingredients were inspected every day. Leftovers could not be kept overnight. Soup had to be boiled for enough time. Porridge could not be diluted to deceive people. The accounts were posted every night. At first, many came to watch. Later, they realized Warmth Hall was not pretending. The food was not luxurious, but it was hot, clean, and filling. The people of the capital began to praise Xiao Jingheng's benevolence. Poor scholars wrote essays praising the court for caring about students. Even low-ranking officials privately said that His Majesty had finally seen people like them. Xiao Jingheng was pleased, but when some rejoiced, others could not sit still. Assistant Minister Zhao Qi was the first to attack. At court, he claimed Warmth Hall sold food too cheaply, disturbing market prices and squeezing private eateries. He also said that as a woman, Miss Shen had no place participating in government-run affairs. Several censors immediately echoed him. Shen Huaiyan's expression turned cold. He was about to step forward when Xiao Jingheng smiled first. "Has Assistant Minister Zhao eaten at Warmth Hall?" Zhao Qi froze. "This subject has not." Xiao Jingheng said, "You have not eaten there, yet you know it disturbs prices." Zhao Qi's face paled. Xiao Jingheng asked again, "Warmth Hall posts its accounts every day. Has the Ministry of Revenue found a deficit?" Zhao Qi forced himself to answer, "Not at present." Xiao Jingheng turned to the censorate. "Has the censorate found that the Shen family accepted private profit?" The chief censor stepped forward. "Replying to Your Majesty, no." Only then did Xiao Jingheng say, "There is no deficit and no private profit. The people receive food, scholars are fed, farmers earn money. Assistant Minister Zhao does not think about improving such a matter, yet rushes to impeach it. Are you afraid the court will accomplish a good thing, or are you afraid that accounts this clear will reveal unclear accounts elsewhere?" The court fell deathly silent. Zhao Qi knelt with a thud. This subject would not dare. Xiao Jingheng said lightly, "Since Assistant Minister Zhao cares so much about market prices, you will organize the supply records of the capital's rice shops, butcher shops, and vegetable sellers from the past 3 years. Present them in 3 days." Zhao Qi's face turned white. When I heard this news in the manor, I was kneading dough for scallion pancakes. Kingy was so excited she almost danced. "Miss, His Majesty avenged us." I sprinkled chopped scallions over the dough and said calmly, "Not for us." Zhao Qi walked into the blade himself. Xiao Jingheng had not investigated Zhao Qi because of me. He had long wanted to clean up the Ministry of Revenue. He only lacked an opening. Warmth Hall was like a lamp, shining on hidden grease in the dark. 3 days later, Zhao Qi could not produce clean records. The censorate followed the trail and uncovered years of collusion between shops under his nephew's name and ministry purchases. They had falsely inflated grain prices, embezzled disaster silver, and even dared to touch military grain transport. Xiao Jingheng was furious. Zhao Qi's property was confiscated, and he was imprisoned. A group of officials was implicated. The court shook. Shen Huaiyan became so busy that he did not eat properly for several days. I was so angry that I carried a food box directly to his study. That night, he was still reading memorials under lamplight. His face was exhausted. The tea by his hand had long gone cold. I placed the food box down heavily. Shen Huaiyan looked up. "Mingtang, why are you still awake so late?" I said. "If father doesn't eat, I won't sleep." He sighed helplessly. "The work is not finished." I opened the food box. Inside were hot porridge, steamed egg, soy-pickled radish, and a small dish of scallion oil-shredded chicken. I sat beside him and said nothing, only stared. Shen Huaiyan had no choice but to eat first. Halfway through, he sighed. "Mingtang, has father made you worry too much?" I said. "Yes." Shen Huaiyan choked. I continued. "If father wants to be the prime minister of everyone under heaven, he must first be my father. If you destroy your body, the people under heaven may not remember you for long, but I will be sad for the rest of my life." The spoon in Shen Huayan's hand paused. The lamplight fell on his face. He looked tired and gentle. He said, "Good. Father will remember." From then on, Shen Huayan truly began eating on time. Although he still forgot when work became busy, as soon as I looked at him, he would obediently put down the memorial. The Prime Minister's manner grew warmer and livelier. However, my interactions with Xiao Jingheng also became more frequent. Every few days, he came privately to the manor. At first, he still made excuses. He said he was inspecting Warmth Hall. He said he was discussing politics with Shen Huayan. He said he happened to be passing by. Later, he did not even bother making excuses. Today, he wanted scallion oil noodles. Tomorrow, he wanted crab roe tofu. The day after, he wanted the hot pot I had once mentioned. I finally could not bear it anymore. "Your Majesty, has the imperial kitchen collapsed?" Xiao Jingheng sat at the little table outside the kitchen, drinking tea slowly. "No, it's only boring. If the imperial kitchen hears this, they may cry. They cook like they write memorials," he said. "Enough rules, not enough spirit." While cutting vegetables, I said, "Your Majesty manages countless affairs every day, yet still has time to taste spirit in food." "How admirable." Xiao Jingheng laughed. "Miss Shen is becoming bolder." My hands did not stop. "Your Majesty comes to eat more and more often. If this common girl had no courage, I would have been frightened to death by now." He chuckled. Every time Shen Huayan saw this, he looked as though he wanted to stop it but did not dare. I knew what he feared. The emperor was young, had not yet named an empress, and the inner palace was empty. There were countless people in the capital watching that position. As the prime minister's daughter, if I drew too close to the emperor, storms would inevitably follow. So I deliberately kept boundaries. When Xiao Jingheng came, I only talked about food, livelihood, and accounts. I never spoke of private feelings. But the human heart does not disappear simply because you refuse to mention it. One early winter night, snow had just begun to fall. Xiao Jingheng came to the prime minister's manor. He carried cold air on his clothes, and there was a rare fatigue between his brows. I did not ask questions. I simply made him a bowl of hot soup noodles. The noodles were hand-pulled. The broth was made from chicken bones. A poached egg rested inside, scattered with chopped scallions. He sat by the window and ate very slowly. I saw that his mood was poor, so I quietly sat across from him and peeled garlic. After a long time, he suddenly said, "Today, an urgent report arrived from the western frontier. Snow blocked the road for military grain. 30,000 soldiers have been short on food for 2 days. My hand paused. Xiao Jingheng said softly. I sat in the palace and looked at those words in the memorial. Suddenly, the dragon throne felt very cold. I did not tell him that an emperor must be strong. Such words were too empty. I only stood, went into the kitchen, and brought out a packet of roasted rice. It was a dry ration I had been testing a few days earlier. Rice was roasted until fragrant, mixed with sesame and a little salt. It could be chewed directly or stirred into hot water as porridge. I handed it to him. If your Majesty trusts me, the army can try making this. Once rice is roasted dry, it becomes light and easier to store. On the road, hot water can turn it into food. If bean flour, sesame, or dried meat are added, it becomes even more filling. Xiao Jingheng tasted a little. His eyes changed at once. Can it be made in large amounts? Yes. The method is not difficult. The key is fire control and keeping it dry. That night, Xiao Jingheng took away the roasted rice method. Half a month later, a military report arrived from the western frontier. The roasted rice rations rushed out by the court had reached the army and solved the urgent need. At court, Xiao Jingheng rewarded the Ministry of Works and the Ministry of Revenue, but did not mention me. That was what I requested. I did not want to stand at the center of the storm, but there are no walls without cracks. Soon, people in the capital still guessed the ration method came from the Shen family. After that, marriage proposals nearly trampled down the prime minister's threshold. There were marquis heirs, newly ranked scholars, distant royal relatives, and even a minister over 40 seeking a second wife. Shen Huaiyan was so angry he rejected all the posts. He said, "My daughter is not a tool for them to weigh benefits." My heart warmed, but that peace did not last. The Empress Dowager summoned me into the palace. She was Xiao Jingheng's birth mother, born from an aristocratic family, and famous for her strong methods. I knew this meeting would not be simple. Shen Huaiyan wanted to decline for me, but I stopped him. Hiding was not a solution. In Signing Palace, incense curled through the air. The Empress Dowager sat above, dressed in splendor. Her expression was kind, but the scrutiny in her eyes was like fine needles. First, she granted me tea. Then she asked what books I usually read and what rules I had learned. I answered one by one. After listening, she smiled. Miss Shen is intelligent, but sometimes a woman being too intelligent is not necessarily fortune. I lowered my eyes. This common girl is dull. I only understand firewood, rice, oil, and salt. The Empress Dowager laughed softly. If firewood, rice, oil, and salt can stir the court, then they are no ordinary household matters. The atmosphere in the hall chilled. She continued, "The emperor is young. He may be drawn to novelty, but the position of empress concerns the foundation of the state. It is not something one can sit in merely by cooking a few dishes." Her meaning was already clear. She did not permit me to approach Xiao Jingheng. I did not feel wronged, nor did I argue. I only said calmly, "The Empress Dowager speaks correctly. This common girl has never dared dream of the empress position." She looked at me as if judging whether I was sincere. I continued, "I helped Warmth Hall so poor scholars could eat. I offered the ration method so soldiers would not go hungry. As for His Majesty, he is the ruler of all under heaven. This common girl would not dare hold private thoughts." When I said this, a faint pain crossed my heart. It was not that I did not dare. It was that I could not. Xiao Jingheng was the emperor. His marriage could never be only between two people. The Empress Dowager was silent for a long while. Finally, she said, "You are clear-headed." I said, "Children from poor households learn clarity early." Something shifted in her eyes. Perhaps she had not expected the prime minister's daughter to call herself a child from a poor household. When I left the palace, heavy snow was falling. At the palace gate, I saw Xiao Jingheng standing beneath the corridor. He wore a black cloak. Against the snow, his features looked cold and lonely. Clearly, he knew the Empress Dowager had summoned me, and he had been waiting. I bowed. "Your Majesty." He looked at me. "Did the Empress Dowager make things difficult for you?" I shook my head. She only reminded this common girl to keep to my place. Xiao Jingheng's expression darkened. "Since when did my affairs need others to decide for me?" I said softly. "Your Majesty is the Son of Heaven. The affairs of the Son of Heaven are never one person's alone." He stared at me, emotions surging in his eyes. "Shen Mingtang, what if I insist on deciding for myself?" Snow landed on his shoulders. In that moment, my heart beat very fast, but I still stepped back half a pace. "Your Majesty may be willful once. This common girl cannot harm father's lifelong clean reputation, nor can I let Warmth Hall become a handle for others to attack your Majesty." The light in Xiao Jingheng's eyes slowly sank. "Is that truly what you think?" I lowered my head. "Yes." After that day, Xiao Jingheng did not come to the prime minister's manor for a long time. I cooked as usual, checked accounts as usual, and visited Warmth Hall to inspect dishes as usual. Only every time I saw the empty little table outside the kitchen, my heart felt a little hollow. Qinghe asked in a small voice. Miss, do you miss His Majesty? I tapped her forehead. What does a little girl know? She covered her forehead and muttered, This servant doesn't understand, but this servant knows that whenever Miss makes scallion oil noodles, you always need one extra portion. My hand paused. Then I cut that extra portion of noodles even finer. Winter passed, and spring came. Warmth Hall opened its third branch. After the court inspected purchasing, much less silver leaked from the treasury. The western frontier situation also stabilized because of improved grain supply. Shen Huayan's prestige at court grew, but he became busier. I began preparing something new. With spring plowing near, I wanted to create direct farm supply contracts. Simply put, Warmth Hall would sign stable purchasing agreements with farmers outside the capital, agreeing in advance on prices and quantities. Farmers would not fear their vegetables rotting in the fields, and the eateries would not fear sudden price spikes. In my previous life, this was not unusual. In Great Jing, however, it required very careful rules. I wrote a thick booklet and handed it to Shen Huayan. After reading, he remained silent for a long time. I asked, Is it not good? He said, It is too good. So good it doesn't seem like something a young lady in the inner chambers thought of casually. My heart tightened. But Shen Huayan did not question me further. He only sighed softly. Mingtong, ever since you woke from illness, Father has felt you were like a different person. My fingers curled. He looked at me gently. But no matter where you learned these things, no matter what you dreamed, you are my daughter. My nose stung. Those words hurt more than any suspicion. I whispered. Father isn't afraid? Shen Huayan smiled. Afraid of what? Afraid my daughter is too capable and makes Father seem useless. I could not help laughing, though I nearly cried. He put away the booklet. I will present it to His Majesty tomorrow. Will His Majesty approve? Shen Huayan looked at me. His Majesty has been in a bad mood lately, but as long as it benefits the people, he will approve. I pretended not to understand. The next day, Xiao Jingheng approved it. Not only did he approve it, he personally ordered the Ministry of Revenue to assign people to assist. But from beginning to end, he did not summon me to the palace, nor did he come to the Prime Minister's manor. I thought we would slowly drift apart like that, until the third day of the third month, the Shangxi festival arrived. As usual, noble ladies in the capital gathered for spring outings, poetry, and flowing wine cups. I had no wish to go, but the Empress Dowager issued an order, specifically naming me. This time, I knew I could not avoid it. The banquet was held at a royal villa. Peach blossoms were in full bloom. Noble ladies arrived in silk and fragrance, speaking poetry and painting scenes. I sat in a corner and quietly ate snacks. To be honest, palace pastries were delicate, but too sweet. After 2 pieces, they became cloying. I was wondering whether hawthorn filling would balance the flavor when someone nearby laughed softly. Miss Shen is indeed different. Others come to compete in beauty and talent. You only care about eating. The speaker was Commandery Princess Anyang. She was a grandniece from the Empress Dowager's maternal family and rumored to be the most likely candidate for empress. She was bright and beautiful, but her words carried thorns. I put down the pastry. Commandery Princess jokes. Food is the heaven of the people. Anyang smiled more sharply. With such a clever mouth, no wonder His Majesty loves going to the Prime Minister's manor for meals. The surroundings instantly quieted. I knew she wanted to embarrass me in public. I said calmly, His Majesty is considerate toward the Shen family's poverty and occasionally visits an old minister. Commandery Princess should be cautious with words. Anyang raised an eyebrow. Poverty? Miss Shen gained a good reputation through a few bowls of porridge. Now, who in the capital doesn't know you? If that is poverty, then those of us who only know embroidery and poetry must be useless. Before I could answer, another noble lady echoed, "A woman should remain within the household, after all. To spend all day dealing with rice, meat, and vegetables is hardly dignified." I smiled. In my previous life, I had heard worse. Some said cooking was servant work. Some said a food blogger was just a woman filming pots and spatulas. Some said women who entered kitchens were worthless, while women who did not were not virtuous. People always had something to say. I lifted my tea and said lightly, "The flowers embroidered on your clothes are fed by rice. The paper you use for poetry comes from trees and grass pulp. The boats you ride, the charcoal you burn, the incense you light, which of them can be separated from ordinary things? If rice, meat, and vegetables lack dignity, then living itself must be undignified." Their faces changed. Anyang sneered. "A glib tongue. I only speak truth." She suddenly pointed at the pastries on the table. "Since Miss Shen is so capable, why not make a pastry here and let us all see? If you cannot, then the rumors are exaggerated." This was humiliation. She was treating me like a kitchen servant, but I looked at the overly sweet palace pastries and suddenly smiled. Very well. Everyone froze. Even Anyang had not expected me to agree. I stood. "Since Commandery Princess wishes to taste it, this common girl will try." A royal villa naturally had a small kitchen. I asked for hawthorn, glutinous rice flour, honey, and a little osmanthus. There was no hawthorn jam, so I made it fresh. I removed the seeds from the hawthorn, chopped it, added a little water, and simmered it slowly until soft. Then I mixed in honey to balance the tartness. I kneaded glutinous rice flour with warm water, wrapped the hawthorn filling inside, pressed them into little cakes, steamed them, lightly pan-fried them, and finally sprinkled osmanthus over the top. The result was hawthorn osmanthus glutinous rice cakes. Soft outside, tart and sweet inside, fragrant and not greasy. Perfect for clearing the palate at a spring banquet. When the pastries were brought out, even the Empress Dowager was drawn by the aroma. Anyang did not want to eat, but under everyone's eyes, she could only pick up one piece. She took a bite. Her expression stiffened. Deliciousness was one thing that could not be faked. The Empress Dowager tasted one as well, and her eyes changed. "This pastry is balanced in sourness and sweetness. It is fresher than the Imperial Kitchen's spring pastries. What is it called?" "Hawthorn osmanthus glutinous rice cake." The Empress Dowager put it down. "Miss Shen does indeed have skill." Anyang's face turned ugly. I bowed and did not continue showing off. But the matter did not end there. Halfway through the banquet, a palace servant suddenly hurried in and reported that a young royal boy had severe stomach pain. The child was only 6. From a branch of the royal clan, he had come with his mother, eaten too many cold, sweet pastries, and drunk chilled tea. Now his stomach cramped painfully. The imperial physician had not yet arrived, and the child was crying. His mother was pale with panic. Everyone became flustered. I should not have interfered. But seeing the child's small face turn white as he curled around his stomach, I could not hold back. I stepped forward and asked, "What did he eat today?" The servants answered in confusion. "Some cold cakes, honey water, and 2 pieces of chilled melon." I understood. Most likely he had upset his stomach with too much cold food. I ordered the cold tea removed at once, then asked for hot water, ginger slices, brown sugar, and a warm cloth for his stomach. By the time the physician arrived, I had already given the child a few sips of ginger sugar water. After taking his pulse, the physician relaxed. "It is nothing serious. Cold food hurt the stomach." The warm compress was timely. The child's mother thanked me on the spot. The Empress Dowager's gaze became even more complicated. Anyang, however, said coldly, "Miss Shen truly has excellent methods." One banquet, and you have taken all the attention." Before I could speak, a cold voice came from outside the hall. "Saving someone is now called taking attention? Anyang, who taught you such rules?" Everyone turned. Xiao Jingheng had arrived. He wore bright yellow informal robes, Gao Yuan following behind him. His expression was cold. The hall knelt in greeting. I also lowered my head among the crowd. Xiao Jingheng's gaze passed over me briefly, then moved away. He greeted the Empress Dowager, then looked at Anyang. Anyang's face turned pale. "Your Majesty, this subject's daughter did not mean that," Xiao Jingheng said lightly. "Then what did you mean?" Anyang could not answer. The Empress Dowager spoke to smooth things over. "Emperor, it was only a few words between young ladies." Xiao Jingheng said, "Even a few words between young ladies should have limits. Miss Shen saved a child of the royal clan today. Reward her." My heart jumped. What I feared most was reward. The more rewards, the more trouble, but since he spoke publicly, I could not refuse. After the banquet, Xiao Jingheng personally sent me to the palace gate. Neither of us spoke. Near the gate, he suddenly stopped. "You have avoided me for a long time." I lowered my head. "It was your Majesty who did not come. You never sent food once." I froze. His tone sounded almost aggrieved. I said, "The palace lacks no imperial meals." Xiao Jingheng looked at me. "Then what do you think I lack?" I could not answer. Wind blew between the palace walls, carrying the faint fragrance of peach blossoms. He said softly, "Shimingtang, I have thought clearly these days. You fear implicating Prime Minister Shen. You fear Warmth Hall being attacked. You fear becoming a target in court. All of that is right. So I will not force you." I lifted my eyes. Xiao Jingheng continued, "I will first straighten the court, keep the inner palace empty, and send back every person who wants to use my marriage as a transaction. When no one can use you to attack the Shen family, when everyone under heaven knows you are not honored because of me, but worthy of respect in your own right, I will ask whether you are willing." My chest trembled. He looked at me. "I can wait, but you cannot keep treating me as an outsider who only comes to steal meals." My eyes suddenly felt hot. After a long while, I said softly, "Then what does your Majesty want to eat?" Xiao Jingheng froze, then smiled. "Scallion oil noodles." I could not help smiling too. "Your Majesty has no ambition." He said, "With you, I am allowed to have none." At that moment, I knew some feelings could not be avoided simply by stepping back, but I did not immediately promise him anything. Because Xiao Jingheng was right, he had to pave the road first. Over the next half year, the court changed greatly. Using the Zhao Qi case, Xiao Jingheng reorganized the Ministry of Revenue. Using Warmth Hall's public accounts as an example, he promoted clear accounts for official granaries across the regions. Shen Huayan led the inspections. He offended many people, but also gained the people's trust. After the farm supply contracts succeeded near the capital, farmers' incomes became stable, and Warmth Hall's costs also steadied. Xiao Jingheng ordered the method promoted to schools and official halls in other provinces. In time, low-cost dining halls appeared across Great Jing. They were not luxurious or beautiful, but they were like sparks of fire, landing in the hearts of poor scholars, struggling commoners, and low-ranking clerks. I remained behind the scenes, organizing recipes, calculating costs, and training cooks. I wrote many booklets: how to simmer bone broth that was not cloudy or fishy, how to turn bean dregs into cakes, how to pickle vegetables without spoilage, how to store dry rations, how to calculate rice and vegetables according to the number of diners. To noble eyes, these things were trivial. To ordinary people, they could save a day. Occasionally, Xiao Jingheng asked Gao Yuan to send ingredients from the palace. Sometimes it was a basket of fresh bamboo shoots, sometimes a small jar of good sauce, sometimes a note without signature. Today was tiring. I want something sweet. Then I would make osmanthus lotus root, red bean rice cakes, or date paste pastries and ask Shen Huaiyan to send them into the palace. Every time Shen Huaiyan's face turned dark, I pretended not to see. Gradually, new rumors spread in the capital. They said the emperor favored Prime Minister Shen's daughter. They said Miss Shen had not captured the emperor's heart through beauty, but through a bowl of porridge. They said the future empress might not be skilled in poetry and painting, but she knew how many bowls of porridge one jin of rice could make. Some mocked. Some admired. I no longer cared much. Life was lived by oneself, not by rumors. The true crisis came the next summer. Floods struck Jiangnan. Dikes broke. Several prefectures were damaged. Refugees moved north, and grain prices rose. The court urgently organized disaster relief. The treasury could issue silver, but the fear was whether that silver would truly reach the victims. Shen Huaiyan entered the palace overnight to discuss affairs. Xiao Jingheng did not sleep for 3 days. When the news reached the Prime Minister's manor, I was reviewing Warmth Hall's summer menu. I immediately realized that more urgent than silver was how grain would be distributed, how the disaster victims would eat, and how illness would be prevented. After a great flood, the most frightening dangers were unclean water and chaotic food. That night, I wrote disaster relief meal shed procedures. Large pots of porridge should be used for centralized feeding. Rice could be mixed with beans to increase fullness. Hot water stations must be set up, and refugees must be prevented from drinking raw water. Ginger salt soup could be used to drive away cold dampness. Sibyl stoves should be arranged by district with orderly queues to prevent chaos. Women, children, and the elderly should be served first. Cooking vessels must be boiled clean every day. Spoiled grain and vegetables must never enter the pot. I wrote until dawn, my wrist aching. When Shen Huaiyan returned, I gave him the booklet. "Father, give this to His Majesty." After reading it, his expression turned grave. He immediately returned to the palace. That very day, Xiao Jingheng ordered experienced workers from Warmth Hall to travel south with the relief teams and set up meal sheds according to the procedures. The censorate was also sent to inspect accounts, and grain distribution was made public. This time, there was far less opposition in court. Over the past year, Warmth Hall had already proven that these seemingly small details could truly put money and grain into people's mouths. Half a month later, news arrived from Jiangnan. The disaster meal sheds had stabilized. Fewer people fought for food, and fewer became ill. A local prefect wrote in a memorial that when the refugees received hot porridge, their hearts settled. Knowing the court had not abandoned them, they did not fall into disorder. Xiao Jingheng read the memorial in the imperial study and remained silent for a long time. Later, Gao Yuan secretly told Qinghe that His Majesty had eaten a bowl of scallion oil noodles alone in the imperial study that night and said the flavor was not as good as Miss Shen's. When I heard it, I lowered my head and smiled for a very long time. After the Jiangnan relief effort, Xiao Jingheng finally issued an imperial decree to appoint Shen Mingtang as empress. When the decree arrived at the Prime Minister's manor, I was drying fermented black beans. The eunuch announcing the decree read it with rising and falling cadence. The entire manor knelt. Shen Huaiyan's expression was complicated. He was pleased, reluctant, and his eyes were red. I accepted the decree calmly. This day was not sudden. Because Xiao Jingheng had prepared too much, he had not allowed me to bear the accusation of charming the ruler. Instead, he first let the people under heaven see what Shen Mingtang had done. Warmth Hall, military rations, farm supply contracts, Disaster meal sheds. These were not ornaments for the Empress position. They were the road I had walked to stand beside him. The Empress Dowager did not oppose it. She only sent a jade bracelet. The palace servant said, "The Empress Dowager said that an empress need not only be dignified. She should also understand whether the people's pots are warm or cold." Hearing this, I smiled softly. On the day of the wedding, the capital streets were packed. When the Phoenix carriage left the Prime Minister's manor, Shen Huaiyan personally helped me into it. He whispered, "Mingtang, if anyone in the palace bullies you, tell father." Holding back tears, I laughed. "Father, that is the imperial palace. What can you do?" Shen Huaiyan straightened his back. "Father will impeach him." I finally laughed out loud, and tears fell with it. Xiao Jingheng waited for me before the palace gate. He wore imperial wedding robes, his features solemn. But when I walked near, he said softly, "The imperial kitchen prepared many dishes today, but what I want most is still your scallion oil noodles." I glared at him. "On our wedding day, can your majesty have a little ambition?" He held my hand, his smile gentle. "I told you, with you, I am allowed to have none." After entering the central palace, I did not simply enjoy wealth as many imagined. The first thing I did was reorganize the imperial kitchen, not to make myself eat better, but to reduce waste. Every day, the palace produced countless leftovers. The rules were complex, and the cost was astonishing. I created new procedures. Meals for the masters were reduced according to need. Clean, unused ingredients were sorted and could be used for palace servants' meals. Ritual offerings that could not be touched were recorded separately. Purchasing accounts were checked every month. At first, the imperial kitchen complained endlessly. Later, they discovered that the empress not only knew how to manage, but truly understood food. Who cut corners, who inflated losses, who used bad oil to hide a stale flavor. I could tell with one taste. After several longtime schemers were punished, the imperial kitchen became obedient. The meals for palace servants improved too. In the past, low-level maids and eunuchs often ate cold rice and spoiled soup. Now they at least had hot porridge and warm vegetables. Gradually, when people in the palace mentioned the empress, they no longer only spoke of beauty and virtue. They said the empress had a scale in her heart and a pot in her hands. Xiao Jingheng laughed for half a day when he heard that. He said, "My empress is truly unique." I said, "If your majesty keeps teasing me, there will be no midnight snack tonight." He immediately shut up. Later, Great Jing became more and more prosperous. Warmth halls spread across prefectures and counties. Some places called them student kitchens. Some called them relief dining halls. Some called them people's food offices. No matter the name, the principle remained the same. Clear accounts, low prices. Clean food. Enough to eat. The military ration method also improved year by year. Roasted rice became only the beginning. Later came dried vegetable cakes, compressed bean flour, salted meat powder, and emergency porridge bricks. Whenever disasters struck, relief sheds could be set up quickly. Farm supply contracts also spread outward. Many farmers who had once feared poor harvest prices now had stable buyers. The court did not become perfect. There were still greedy officials, arrogant nobles, and difficult disasters. But at least, when problems appeared, there were tools to solve them, and in those tools, there was always a little trace of the kitchen. Years passed. Lu Yunzhou, the poor scholar who had once drunk porridge in the Prime Minister's manor, passed the examination and became an official. When he left for his first post, he came to the palace to thank me. He had become steadier, no longer the thin young man holding a porridge bowl with red eyes. He said, "Your Majesty, Your Highness, this subject will remember that one bowl of porridge for life." I smiled. Then go and make sure the people under your rule can also drink hot porridge." He bowed deeply. This subject will not forget. He did not forget. Many years later, Liu Yunzhou became one of Great Jing's most capable ministers in local governance. Wherever he served, granary accounts were clear, disaster kitchens were orderly, and farmers had stable contracts. People praised him as a practical official. Whenever I heard reports of him, I felt like I had seen a small seed planted by that first bowl of porridge grow into a tree. Shen Huaiyan gradually grew old. He remained the same stubborn, upright prime minister. The only difference was that he had learned to eat on time. Every year, on my mother's death anniversary, I returned to the Shen Manor with Xiao Jingheng. Cook Zhou would still be there, though older, and Qinghe had become the household manager, far more capable than before. The kitchen was no longer as poor as when I first arrived. The rice jar was full. The vegetables were fresh. There was always a pot of broth on the stove. But each time I returned, Shen Huaiyan still asked me to make radish egg porridge. He said the palace had endless delicacies, but only this porridge tasted like the day his daughter truly came back to life. I never corrected him. Some truths did not need to be spoken. Whether I was the original Shen Mingtang or a wandering soul from another time, I had inherited her father, her home, her name, and her unfinished love. That was enough. One winter, the first snow fell. I cooked hot pot in the small palace kitchen. The copper pot bubbled. The mutton slices were thin as paper. Cabbage, tofu, and mushrooms filled the table. Xiao Jingheng returned from court with cold air clinging to him. After sitting down, he first drank a mouthful of hot soup. Then he suddenly said, "Mingtang, sometimes I think, what would have happened if I had never gone to the Prime Minister's manor for that meal?" I placed a slice of mutton into his bowl. "Then your Majesty might still be eating boring imperial meals." He laughed. "And you?" I thought for a moment. I would probably still be in the kitchen, trying to figure out how to feed an entire manor with half a bag of old rice. Xiao Jingheng held my hand. Fortunately, I went. I looked at the snow outside the window and said softly, "Yes, fortunately." I once thought that after becoming the daughter of a prime minister, I would be dragged into power struggles, trapped in a deep mansion, and reduced to a chess piece on the board of fate. But in the end, I discovered that the power to change destiny did not have to come only from blades, armies, and authority. Sometimes it could be a bowl of hot porridge, a cup of warm soup, a clear account posted in public, a heart that could not bear to let people go hungry. The great truths of the world are hidden in the court, but they are also hidden in the kitchen. Some people use pens to stabilize the land. Some use swords to guard the mountains and rivers. As for me, I only used a cooking pot to add a little warmth to the human world. Many years later, when historians wrote of Empress Jiaoning, they said she assisted the emperor, reformed palace management, promoted low-cost dining halls, aided disaster relief, and brought benefit to the people. But no one knew that everything had begun on the day I transmigrated, when I discovered my own father had gone to court on an empty stomach. I simply could not stand it, so I rolled up my sleeves and cooked a pot of radish egg porridge. And with that pot of porridge, I began the warm, smoky half of my life in this world.